Hey folks, how are you? Welcome to Spring is on the Way here. Inching closer. It's sunny, it's warm, it's been really warm, and it's beautiful. Why do I always start talking about the weather? Because I'm Canadian, that's why. So, good afternoon. For those of you joining live, I am coming to you Mountain Time after the Daylight Savings Time switch. Here, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you're joining us today, whenever you're joining us, whether it's here on Instagram Live or you're coming to us from Terry, I just about said you're coming to us from Seattle. You're coming to us from Seattle. but if you're watching on YouTube, you might not know that. So welcome everybody. So glad you're here. So glad you're joining me today for week 10. 10. We've already made it 10 weeks. Can you believe it? Week 10 of the 2024 Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong Rainbow Edition, because who doesn't love rainbows? Hello to Louisa's from Michigan. Everyone joining, if you want, feel free to pop up where you're joining us from today. Want to say hello to as many of you as I can. So hello, everybody. As you may or may not know, I'm coming to you from Calgary. It is sunny today. It is warm. And that blizzard that we had, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, now all that snow is melting, and on top of the other snow, it's a giant mess outside, but it's melting. That's what counts. Hello, Killyfish85 is coming to us from South Florida. I was just reading an article about Florida and how they hate spring breakers. And that the article was really about how the economic benefit of the tourists for spring break are, for many communities, not financially worth it anymore because of the destruction that so many cause. Anyways, that was my lunchtime reading, was that article. So cheers to you in South Florida where you definitely don't have snow. Definitely not. Anyways, I am here. I'm sitting down because it's that kind of a day. Did already go to the dog park today. We took our puppy, you may remember our puppy, to the off-leash park for the first time. We've been working on his recall, my son and I, because we're the ones who walk him the most. So we've been working on his recall. He's not quite ready for like the full onslaught of the dog park. He gets way too happy, excited, not reactive, but happy, excited seeing the other dogs, so then he doesn't listen. But there's a fenced area within the off-leash park, and we went there. We got to play with a couple of other dogs, learned some manners from a couple of other dogs, and he tired him out, and it tired out my son to do. He was really good for about 4 days, and today is not so much of a good day. So he's on the couch outside the room, listening to an audiobook. Much to his dismay, I made him do that. He'll probably fall asleep. He's already had one nap. Anyways, and I'm in here sewing with you because this is my break as well. This is my time to play, as much as I hope it is your time to play and what you give yourself for a little bit of play every week. So I'm excited for today because we've gone to curves, which we all know I love. I love an improv curve. It's my comfort block. I actually was thinking last night, not that I really want to start a new quilt. I'm not actually in a starting mode, but I would like to just do some improv curves because they just make me feel good. You know, improv curves and chocolate chip cookies, a mug of tea. My day's made. All I have is the tea and today's improv curves. So this is today's block here. Wanted to kind of change up, not just add curves in, but change up, gosh, gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Right, like we have the dimensions, I guess maybe it is, right? We have kind of an all over thing here. Definitely lots of little pieces all over, but with our rainbows, right? This one has the 6, this has the 6. This one kind of doesn't. Today's block is reminiscent of this, but a little bit different. We'll see how it comes together in those rainbow fabrics, but that'll be a nice balance over here. So let's get to it. We're going to do this. You need your 6 rainbow fabrics, no background in today's block. And I will go over, once we move to the cutting table here, I will go over the fabric requirements, because while you need all 6, 2 have to be cut a little bit differently, and then the other 4 are cut one way. So you are going to have to make a decision earlier on, but that's okay. It'll work. Trust me. And we'll have fun. It's a pretty quick block to make. So let's head over here. Let's say hello to our ladies. Hello. We'll get down here onto the cutting table. There's my rainbow fabrics. We know I love them. This is my morning make project that I've been working on and will be working on for probably years to come. I'm just going to show you. Look at those sweet little blocks. I need to make 9,000 of them for the project. Thanks. One block at a time. One block at a time. So what do you need? We are going to need 4 squares and 2 rectangles, essentially. So I have my 2 rectangles and my 4 squares. Now, which fabrics you use for those, it kind of depends on the look that you want to do. So on mine, I'm going to bring the monochromatic block, right? If we look here, this is kind of how to think of the 6 fabrics, sort of 1, 2, 3, actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? We're going to have 2 background pieces. That's the rectangle, right? And then 2 squares on that we'll use on each of the rectangles to make these curves. Now on this version, this monochromatic version, I took the outsides of my rainbow, the black end and the white end, and I made them the rectangles. So paired different fabrics. So I paired the other two lighter ones with the darker fabric, the other 2 darker ones with the lighter fabric. That was just because I wanted that high contrast moment in the center. For my pastel grunge version, I actually decided I'm going to go in rainbow order. Okay, so hence we've got orange, but I'm going to need, you know, one end of the rainbow, so it's going to move across like this. So pink, orange, yellow. And then on my blue background, I'm going to have it then moved to green and purple, right? So I have my rainbow moving like that through the colors. You can play with it, change it up, have some fun doing something different with the colors. Where you put your squares can also change, right? I can have these in different orders, different corners, that sort of thing, but I like this idea of it kind of circling around the block. So that's what I'm going to go with. So we're only going to work with 1 rectangle at a time. So now that I know what's going with what, I'm just going to set that aside, and I'm going to go here and work with my first rectangle on this. So I only want to attach 1 circle at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and do them kind of in order. So I'm going to attach that top right corner to my block. Now, here's the thing. I'm right-handed, not lefty. When we are cutting circles curves right-handed, you want to have the block in a way that allows the ruler to flow. That's regardless of whether you're right or left-handed. But the difference is that if you're a lefty, you're going to situate the block a certain way. If you're a righty, you're going to situate the block a certain way. So for lefties in the room, you want to cut from kind of bottom left to top right on your curve. So you're going to rotate these fabrics. You have them, you know, placed on top of each other, right sides up, and then you're going to go from the bottom left of your square over to the top right. I am not going to cut because I will hurt myself and wreck the fabric because I'm not left-handed. But that's the motion you want to do if you're left-handed. If I am right-handed and I keep my rectangle of fabric this way, what's going to happen is that I'm going to actually be cutting towards myself in this setup, and that's never safe. Okay? You're going to get a much more smooth cut and a safer cut if you rotate that rectangle again so that you can be cutting bottom right to the left. Okay, because I'm right-handed, that's the way we're going to cut. So our fabrics are layered right sides up, and I'm cutting from bottom right of my square, not of my rectangle, of my square. They're layered. I have the square on top so I can see it, and I'm going to go from bottom right up to the left. Now, one thing I didn't mention is what size your rectangles and your squares should be. You want to give yourself wiggle room for what your finished block is going to be. So for example, my finished block in these pastel grunges is 10.5 inches square. Well, that's the trimmed size, and then of course in a quilt it will finish at 10 inches. So if I'm aiming for 10.5 inches, typically with curves, every time we cut a curve, we shrink an inch. Now, when I made the first block, that meant I cut out 2 inches, you know, my strip was 2 inches wider and 2 inches taller. I ended up not using a lot of that and having to trim quite a bit of it off. So that was a bit excessive. So I would say give yourself at least an inch on width. So in this case, my rectangle, I cut it 12 inches in length when I'm going to need 10.5, and I cut it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a bit when I'm going to need it to be 6 in there. So I gave myself an inch to an inch and a half more, you know, in length and in width than what I'm going to need this piece to be. So just to give yourself wiggle room. We always give ourselves wiggle room when we're doing improv curves, because what's missing when we cut these is seam allowances. So you'll see what I mean when I get over here to sewing. So I'm going to move you over to the machine so you can see me sew. So now I'm going to take my piece. I've got my rectangle and I've got my curve. And because I don't have seam allowances, I'm actually going to come in just a little bit. I'm not going to line these two up right on the edge there. I'm going to come in with my rectangle or curve piece. I'm going to come in about 1/2 inch to start. And you'll see I'm using no pins. For those of you new here, you will see that I'm not using pins, and I'm only going to worry about sewing or lining up 1 inch at a time as I sew. So I just get it started, it's established, and I'm going to slowly guide the fabric through the machine, stopping and adjusting as necessary. It's preferable if you can have your machine stop in the needle down position as you go. That just means it won't shift every time you stop. You might periodically need to lift your presser foot, but you're just going to guide that through until you get to the end. Okay, and there I have that first curve. Now, I'm going to press this before I do the second curve. You can press that in either direction. I'm not going to press it just yet because I didn't turn my iron on. When you do these improv curves, they'll tell you which way they want to go, right? So I'm just holding this piece or laying it down, and you can see that the seam allowance wants to go towards the square, not the other side. You can flip it and make it go the other way. It's not a big deal. See, you can see that in the sunshine. It will still lay nicely there, but because I'm not worried about any sort of shadowing or anything, I'm just going to go with the way it wants to be. So it really is just a quick press. It doesn't look like it, but I am lifting up my iron in between. For those of you doing the Instagram Quilt Fest, I think today's prompt was about irons. I'm not doing it, but I see the posts. Okay, let's go here. So now I want to add my yellow on here. I want to do it on the opposite corner. You could do it on the, again, right? I could do it on this corner and have it here. It's entirely up to you. I like this opposite corner idea. And my actual yellow piece is a bit more of a rectangle, which I'm going to play with. I'm going to go with it, which means I'm going to start here again, bottom right, up to the left, because I'm right-handed. Left-handed people are going to go from bottom left over to the right. But I'm going to do this and have it be kind of a tall curve. So again, layering those fabrics right sides up. And making that cut. So it's a bit more of an oblong curve, which I think is totally fine. And then we'll go to the machine and sew that, and then we're going to repeat with our other rectangle. And then sew those two rectangles together, and that's it. So remember, coming in just a little bit there. You just want to be careful as you're guiding it through. That cut edge has a lot of bias and stretch, so just be careful. You don't want to be pulling on things or yanking them. If you're finding that your curved blocks really aren't laying very flat, sometimes it can be the sharpness of the curve, but quite often it's because we've pulled too much on that curve. So there we go. Interestingly, this one wants to press towards the orange. We'll go with it. I'm not fussed on this in terms of which direction it wants to play in. All that matters is that you press it. So there is my first one. Now I'm going to do the second. So I've got my rectangle, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I want to do that corner first. So we're kind of lining up. Not really, but I actually don't want it to line up. I want there to be some discrepancies. So again, you can't see that. Again, cutting in a safe manner away from me that allows everything in terms of my rotary cutter to move smoothly. There's that one. You can come watch me sew. I really got a sunbeam coming in here and a scrap basket blocking where that wants to go. There was originally forecast for rain this afternoon, but the sun makes me think that's not happening. There we go. I'm going to press that one. That one wants to press towards the blue, so that's what we'll go with. It's at this time of year when you start seeing spring decorations and spring colors and everything, that these fabrics really seem to make sense. They were a nice bit of sunshine in the winter, but now they make sense. So I just confirmed, you know, which corner do I want it up here again. Oh, I could do that. That might be kind of fun. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I changed my mind part way. You have the freedom. We all have the freedom to do that. So I'm going to lay that on there and again, cut that curve. There we go. I think I especially like this pale blue in the grunge. It is a really, really pretty color. Okay, back over here. There we go. Sew those around. So whether you've done these curves with me a few times or this is your first time, you're just finding the Sewalong, I hope this explains it. It demystifies it. It's really not that big of a deal. I think we get worked up about curves. So there's that last one. I think she wants to press towards the purple. So that's what we'll do. Give your blocks a really good press. Remember, I always highly recommend flatter pressing spray for these improv blocks. Just helps everything be flatter. Lives up to its name. It's not that, it's great marketing. It's not that exciting in terms of a name, but you got to call things what they are sometimes. Okay, so what do we do next? We need to assemble these, right? So you have some choices in terms of how you assemble these. There's two sorts of approaches. You can take each rectangle, measure them into exactly half of your block. So if I have 10.5-inch squares, overall, that means I want this to be each rectangle to be 10.5 inches wide and 6 inches tall, right? Because we're going to be sewing them together, and we will, no, 6 inches, 5.5 inches tall. So we're going to be losing some of that. The other option is that you can simply place them next, one on top of each other, flip it over if you want to kind of see where it's going to be, but you can place them if you're sure you have enough wiggle room, which I'm pretty sure I have, and then just give yourself a nice straight cut there and then square the whole thing up afterwards. It really doesn't matter. I did the first method on this block, right? I cut them into the perfect rectangles. This one, I'm going to do this technique. So just going to make sure I'll be accounting for everything. Give myself a nice fresh edge. And I'm going to go ahead and sew that seam. And then we'll press the block and finish it up. There we go. Pretty straightforward, right? Just going to give that a press. You can press it open. You can press it to one side. It really doesn't matter as long as you press it well. Take the time to press it well. And then I know my block is going to be bigger than I need it to be, so I'll trim that down. But let's see where it's at this point. There we go. Some really interesting kind of movement through the block. Create some really kind of fun stuff. So let's see where we're at. Oh yeah. So I've got just pretty much the perfect amount of width for this and way more height than I need, which means I have choices in terms of how I've moved the ruler, right? If I'm going to put that line that I did at exactly halfway, right there it is at 5 1/4. It means I'm trimming off that at the top and this at the bottom, which works just fine. But I could also play around if I want to play with those proportions just a little bit. I can do that too. And it really sort of changes the overall block, because just to show you, if let's say I do those sorts of proportions, I'm just going to be trimming off this little bit. I'm just going to show you for now. Trimming off that little bit, but then what's going to happen is, you know, I'm going to have the bottom look like this, where I have kind of a different sort of shape than this sort of swoop that I have on the top. So you get to play around with that. I actually think I might move it down so that the bottom portion is actually just a little bit bigger than the top. And the reason for that is because I want to see that edge of blue here, which I wouldn't the other way. So that's what I'm doing. It won't be split exactly in half, but I'm going to be pretty happy with where that comes out. So these little bits can be thrown away. This one strip add to the scrap bin. So I've cut my nice two sides from the bottom up and then across, and I will flip it around and trim up that last bit, right? I have a nice fresh cut on which to line up my ruler. Hold that ruler in place. And do a trim. And there we go. There is the week 10 block, right? Some really interesting movement. I think even more movement than we got in week 6. With some similar kind of techniques using up our scraps. And there's both blocks. Here, let's do that way, because that sunbeam, it's just affecting things, right? 2 different versions of week 10 blocks. Pretty straightforward, hey? I just about said A. How Canadian am I? Pretty straightforward, eh? You know I had to do it, right? You know I had to do it. So let's put our blocks up on the design wall here. We'll ignore this other project that I've got going on. I don't know that today will be the day that it gets pieced together, but I didn't want to take it off the design wall just yet. So, oh, I like seeing, you know, as the quilt grows, that sort of, it's going to have that kind of checkerboard impact, because background is only in every second block. It's like I meant to do that. So, Killyfish asks, what is in Flatter? It is a non-starch based product. I'm just trying to see if it has ingredients. I can't read that one. I think I have my weak glasses on, not my stronger ones. Oh, that one's even tinier. I just need a better light. So it says it is made with plant-derived and renewable ingredients, soft mist sprayer, blah, blah, no sulfates, no silicones, no SLS or SLESs. I don't know what that means. And definitely no wrinkles. Biodegradable, phosphate-free, dye-free. What's inside? Here we go. Water. Something I can't read. stearyl ethyl dimonium methosul something. Some chemicals, let's be honest. Castor oil, sodium hydroxide. There's a bunch of stuff. Not many, but not much. But I know that it is not starch-based. As for what it is, I mean, they claim that there are no sulfates, no silicons. It's phosphate-free. There's no dyes in it. You can get scented or unscented. My favorite scent is the fig. That's the green one. This is yuzu. I think there's pineapple. I think there's a pink grapefruit maybe. And you can get unscented if scented doesn't work for you. I find that the scent doesn't linger just when you're using it. And then once the block kind of cools, you don't really smell it again until maybe, you know, if you're ironing a quilt top, you might smell it again. That's it. But for improv piecing, it's fantastic because we're not using on grain things. And so having just either the steam or the flatter or both really gets the blocks flat so that when we trim them or square them up, they're a true size. And I think that's really important. I've seen a lot of blocks where they get a real quick press and then a square up. And then so when you press them really well, it changes their size. And that's not what we want. We want to have them good and pressed before we trim to the size that we need. I hope that helps. Most quilt shops carry these. At least here in Canada. I don't think I've been in a quilt shop that doesn't have flatter. Their other main product, they have two other main products. Soak is how they started. The company is called Soak, which was a washing soap for primarily knits, hand knits, perfect for blocking, that kind of stuff. They're a Toronto-based company, women-owned. Go Jacqueline, she's awesome. And they also have a thread conditioner that they make too, I think. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. Maybe that's somebody else. I thought it was them. Anyways, they're fantastic. We love them. And I cannot recommend the product enough. I'm not a big Notion person. Those of you know who've been around me know that. But it's one thing that I really do recommend. That's it. That's week 10. I probably spent more time chatting than we did sewing. It's that easy of a block. And it's also not exactly shocking that I spent more time chatting. So just want to say thank you to everybody. Killyfish, you're welcome for the discussion on flatter. I see your note there. Just going to make sure I didn't miss any other questions as people were kind of coming and going throughout the live. No. Yeah, have fun. I like that ended up getting that kind of little wave thing going there, which is sort of unexpected. That's one of the best parts about improv, is that you can't always predict what it's going to look like, which terrifies some people. I get it. But it's exciting to see what can happen too. So that's where we're at. Week 10 of the 2024 Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong Rainbow Edition. I am your host, Cheryl Arkeson. I'm so glad that you joined me today here live on Instagram or later on Instagram or YouTube. It's lovely to see you. Lovely to have you playing. We'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.